Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films back again with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Last time on JoJo, we had Operation Savage Guardian, Head to the Courtyard, Part 2. Oh god, excuse me. We had Jolene and Weather Report continuing the fight against Jumping Jack Spark. There was a whole lot of anti-gravity stuff. They ended up in a vacuum with weather forecast, whatever his name is, creating basically a spacesuit of air for the two of them. And there was a whole lot of stuff until eventually Jolene was able to drag Jumpin' Jack Flash into the vacuum and was able to beat the crap out of him and beat him. So yeah. And then she was about to go through the door to get to the courtyard, and she thought a guard was opening the door, but instead it was the good father Poochie. So yeah, we're having an encounter with our villain already. So yeah. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like always, the reaction is down in the description and in the pinned comment. Let's get going. Alrighty. Stone Ocean Part 1. That is it. You'll excuse me during this discussion. My shoulder just suddenly started hurting out of nowhere, so I'm trying to massage it a bit. Anyway, Part 6, Part 1. Which I know, because I did... I knew when Part 6 was airing, I guess you could say. Because people were saying that Netflix dropped all 12 of these episodes at once. And I will go ahead and agree, even though, I've been watching Part 6 week to week. I'm going to agree that yes, Netflix absolutely killed Stone Ocean. Because Netflix, see, it's a very interesting thing that, Netflix was sort of the pioneer of streaming, I feel like, and especially with streaming shows, where it's like back in the day when it was Stranger Things or Daredevil or whatever, and whatever you think about those shows, that's beside the point. But that was always a big thing. That was such a big thing back then. It's like, oh man, you don't have to wait week to week. You can just binge it all. And people would binge all 12 episodes of Daredevil, And that's where binging culture began, basically, was with Netflix. But now, it's so weird that it's like, I feel like people don't want that anymore. Like, we've gone back now, Like, especially when you have other shows where, like most anime, basically. Most anime, they'll go through a season. There'll be a 12-week season that, every show during that season will have a new episode every week, You'll go in, there'll be a new episode on Crunchyroll or High Dive, whatever. What's High Dive? Like, I know that Oshinoko is on High Dive, and I could not be bothered to try to subscribe to that. So, I watched that through other methods, but you didn't hear that from me. So yeah, it's like, but I feel like people do enjoy that more. So there's the anime side to it, but then there's also just like other shows are starting to pick up on that. House of the Dragon was a big one. House of the Dragon, I feel like, was a big one. Actually, I guess just all of HBO, they're still doing that, because House of the Dragon, which I remember, I loved reacting to that, and going week to week was so fun with everyone. And recently they also did The Last of Us. I did not watch The Last of Us. I did not watch The Last of Us week to week. I didn't react to it. Kind of part of me to wish as I did, but whatever. It's too late now. So yeah, but people really, really enjoyed that, or other stuff, There's so many other things now where I feel like people were basically ready, like, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to it. You know, we kind of like that, you know? And then Netflix was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to throw out 12 episodes of JoJo at the same time. And it's like, what? And it's one of those things. It's like, especially because of the wait, and an understandable wait between animating parts of JoJo, you really should like take your time, you know? Let people enjoy it over the course of weeks, you know? And yeah, you can take a break after episode 12. We'll come back in a couple months and we'll do the next part, you know? You can do that. But you gotta do it. And yeah, I definitely think that a lot of the hype that should have been around part 6 was lost because it's like, oh, well, here you go, you know? Netflix definitely did not help that. So that's pretty much, you know, my 2 cents on that. Interestingly enough, you know, even though, I mean, I guess, you know, it's just that JoJo is, you know, on Netflix, I guess just for the rest of the world. I imagine it's still on some sort of television or something in Japan because the episodes are formatted exactly the same as normal JoJo episodes. One thing I notice, and this is something I've been thinking about recently because I've been rewatching The Orville because it's now on Disney Plus. And the first 2 seasons were aired on Fox, and they were standard length episodes, you know, with commercial breaks and the whole 9 yards. And when they did their 3rd season, they moved over to Hulu exclusively, so episodes could be much longer, you know? Pretty much every episode was over 1 hour long, and one of their episodes was actually an hour and a half long. And that's fine. The Orville is a great show, so I'm okay with it. But at the same time, there is a part of me that's like, I kind of prefer when shows are standard length, you know? It's not really too big of an issue, but, I mean, you can even see on something like The Mandalorian, you know? On something like The Mandalorian, sometimes they'll just have, like, 30-minute episodes, and it's like, oh, is it? That's all we got? But maybe that's also good that they don't overstay their welcome. But JoJo clearly... It's so weird. It's that JoJo clearly is still formatted exactly the same as it used to be, but now it's just being posted. They're putting them all out at the same time, and it's so weird, you know? Which, that must mean that if it was airing week to week in Japan, then who got it first? You know, did Japan get it first, or did we technically get the sub version first? Or was it just on Netflix and David Production just made it exactly the same, you know? They didn't want to change anything. I don't know. Or maybe they just made it to where it will be able to air on TV. I don't know. And does any of this matter to the actual episode? No. But I just thought I'd give my 2 cents on the whole Netflix JoJo situation. I do still think that the fact that at the beginning of every episode of Part 6, they play the Netflix logo and say, a Netflix anime series, that's them with too big of a head, you know? I didn't even like that for the animated Witcher movie, when they put a Netflix anime movie. Like, Netflix, you're not anime. Japan is anime. Thus, it's like, yes, you can host these things, but like, Crunchyroll doesn't look at My Hero Academia and say, this is a Crunchyroll original, you know? No, this is just where My Hero Academia is being hosted, you know? Is that, or Attack on Titan, or anything like that. Crunchyroll, now there are Crunchyroll originals, for better or for worse. There's at least one that's really good. But Crunchyroll doesn't take everything they put on their platform and be like, these are our shows. So I don't like that Netflix does that, you know? I don't like that Netflix does that, you know? Especially because I'm pretty sure this still airs on Toonami. So, anyway. That's all I wanted to say. That's all I wanted to say about the whole JoJo situation. I thought it would be a good time to do this because this is technically the end of Part 6, Part 1. So, yeah. Now let's talk about the episode. Dio. We got to see Dio. Okay, and just immediately jumping ahead to the ending here, where it's like, oh, the bone of my best friend, Dio Brando. And it's like, what bone is that specifically? Because that could very much be the bone of Jonathan Joestar. Like, oh, buddy, you need to be sure, you know? Like, I don't know what he's doing with it. I don't know what this guy is going to do with it. This Foghorn Leghorn guy. But I don't know, but that could very much be a bone of Jonathan Joestar. But why does he have it? And is it still vampiric in essence? Because, I mean, Jonathan's body, when separated from Dio's head, was still vampiric and, you know, was destroyed in the sunlight, you know? So how he would have any bone from Dio, I don't know. But man, alright, so interesting stuff with Dio. How I guess it's that I don't know, like, because I mean, part of me was just so ecstatic to have Dio back. I tried to listen, but I was just so excited, you know. But yeah, so Dio, I don't know, because this doesn't fully line up, I feel like, with Dio in Part 3. Because Dio in Part 3, you know, he was going to rule over humanity, you know? He was their superior. As a vampire, he was the king of stand users, you know? He reigned supreme, you know? And that's what he was going to do had Jotaro not beaten him. You know, if he had beaten Jotaro, then he would have, you know, ruled over all creation as the king of stands, you know? But I don't know. Now he's talking about heaven, you know? Which, I guess that could, you know, maybe that explains why Pucci is a priest, you know? I don't know. There's something apparently about... There's some sort of way to achieve heaven, which is interesting. And the only person who knows about this now is Jotaro, because Jotaro read Dio's diary. So he has the memory of it. So that's why Pucci had targeted Jotaro specifically. So now, luckily Jotaro will get Star Platinum, so he will be revived, but he's not going to have any of his memories, which is a problem. I don't know, man. We got some interesting stuff in this one. Definitely some interesting stuff. Some questions about the good father. So, also, frogs. I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared for it to be raining frogs. But that was clever. That was very clever that that weather forecast was able to use... he can control the weather. He can control the weather, and he used Florida to his advantage. That's really funny. Which, man, when the narrator started explaining that, this is when you really know we're calling back to stuff in... we're calling back to the vibes of Part 1 and Part 2. Because when the narrator started explaining that, it was the same sort of energy... Star Platinum, no. It's the same sort of energy as... There were 2 knights of Mary Queen of Scots, and now we're going to talk about them for 5 minutes before Jonathan fights them because they're zombies. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, in Part 1, you're like... What are you talking about? I was not prepared for this. We just killed Jack the Ripper. What are you talking about, Mary Queen of Scots? And then, but see now, in Part 6, you've been beaten down so much by JoJo that it's like, starts raining frogs. Yeah. It also helps that it's Florida. Like, I just believe that. Like, I absolutely believe that would happen in Florida. Like, yeah, of course it would. And the explanation that they give is that it must be some sort of tornado. Basically, a tornado, takes these, animals, these animals or these fish, uproots them, and then starts raining. That. Yeah, honestly, you ever seen the movie Twister? Oh, honey, I gotta go. We got cows. It's exactly that. There's just a cow just flying across in front of Bill Paxton. So yeah, I mean that is a thing that feels like America. The only country that consistently gets tornadoes. Where there's an entire season and an entire just part of geography labeled as Tornado Alley. I know this as a person who lives in Tornado Alley, Oh, boy. So, yeah. And, of course, Florida also... Florida, while not being Tornado Alley per se, but, I mean, certainly would. It's Tornado Alley adjacent at the very least, and, hell, Florida's had its fair share of hurricanes, too, So, when it gave that explanation of, like... Because at first you're like, why the fuck? It's like, how the fuck did he get frogs and stuff? And it's like, Florida. Like, oh, understandable. Have a nice day. Like, yeah, of course Florida would have that, Like, if you did this in, like, part 5, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about, But the fact that it's like, yeah, this doesn't happen in Italy. This happens in Florida, And I like that. Another very American thing is that guy who's like, I don't know, there could be a liability. I need to go get my supervisor. Like, that is such an American move. That is such an American move to go get your supervisor in case of liability. Bro, that was so good. Araki knows what he's writing, man. Araki has clearly been to America, at least, Holy crap. I love Jolene weaving a net to protect herself. That was really cool. I love seeing the net being woven around her, but also just Stone Free's head just like sitting there, like that was kind of funny. And then her being so clever. God, this is why I freaking love Jolene. But she's so freaking clever that it's like, yeah, the poison is only when they splat and, explode, basically. So she just got a bunch of ones that weren't doing that, or just got a bunch of ones before they splatted, got them and used them as a cover, basically. So that was really good. And then, yeah, she was just waiting for someone to come get that disc, Sure enough, Pale Snake, who has a range, by the way. He has a range of about 20 meters. That's impressive. But that also makes me wonder how strong he actually is, Because that's sort of the thing, is that Star Platinum basically has a range of 1, maybe 2 meters at the most. But Star Platinum is ungodly strong, But that's the whole thing with all of them, With every, like, protagonist stand we've had, Star Platinum, Crazy Diamond, Golden Wind, and now Stone Free, that all of them have that sort of short range, with the one exception being Stone Free, who only has that in humanoid form. Otherwise, can shoot out pretty far, That might be weird. Don't take that out of context, or don't take that weirdly. But anyway, but yeah, so yeah, that's always been the thing. That's even been the thing for Killer Queen, or King Crimson, or even The World, Like, all of them have had that sort of limited range where they need something else if they're going to do that. Dio had knives, Kira had sheer heart attack, I I guess King Crimson didn't have anything for range, so yeah. But so to hear that Pale Snake has a range of about 20 meters is really interesting, but it does make you question, how strong it actually is, But I also love him, chucking a disc with a command in it. It's basically, it's kind of like Heaven's Door, which I guess that makes sense with all this talk of heaven, that it is sort of similar, It's just a bit clunkier, basically, so. But yeah, and then the Savage Guardian. The Savage Guardian was a pigeon who was able to take Star Platinum, which was good. Jolene was able to take it from Pale Snake, and then they got out of there. So that's good. So, Star Platinum is back on its way to Jotaro, which is good. He'll be revived, but he won't have his memories, unfortunately. And so, yeah, the last thing is, what does Pucci hope to get out of Dio's bone? The bone of Dio Brando, although could be the stolen bone of Jonathan Joestar. So, I don't know. We will have to see. We will definitely have to see. But really, really interesting stuff. Really, really great episode. Even if it's, ridiculous as rain and frogs, but still, very, very good, very interesting. Great encounter between Jolene and Pucci, and I'm excited to see where we are going from here. But that is basically it. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist for all of my JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reactions, as well as another video you can go click on if you want. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.